I'm too invested. I should probably ask you all my questions, get to know you better. For I'm too invested. I should probably ask you all my questions, get to know you better.
Hi, I am CJ Warrant, and I'm with my host, Rochelle Bradley, and this is Wednesday Coffee Clutching. We have here our wonderful award-winning author, J.E. Irvin, or Janet, or Jan, is a career educator and writes women's fictions, mystery, and contemporary romance. Her stories, poems, and essays have appeared in many publications. She lives with her husband on the edge of a nature park that enriches her creative life. Thank you, Jan, for joining us.
Well, thank you both for inviting me. This is my very first live podcast. I had done one previously about 2 years ago, but it was recorded. So this is exciting. Thanks.
Having a live, yes. Well, tell us. Well, okay. So we have two questions. This is brand new because we haven't done this in the previous live stuff. So we have two questions for you. First is, since this is Wednesday Coffee Clutching, and we drink coffee. So what is your favorite beverage of the morning?
Well, it isn't coffee, which is really interesting because my parents loved coffee. They always drank it. This is a sensory memory I have from my early childhood of the early morning coffee percolating in the old metal coffee pot that you had the innards that you had to put in. But I'm a tea drinker, and I just never acquired a taste for coffee. In my undergraduate studies, one of the courses I took was on British Lit. It was a small group, and the professor was from England. He had us to his home for the classes, and every class before we started our discussions, he introduced us to a new tea, and then he would serve it to us. It was cool. It was such a neat experience. So I had never had green tea. I never knew that there were so many varieties because I didn't grow up in a household that had all of those gourmet type things going on. And it was such an experience, and it just enhanced my appreciation for and love for tea. So that's my favorite morning drink.
I enjoy tea in the afternoon as long as it's decaf because I don't drink caffeinated beverages anymore because of health issues. But a tea in the afternoon, it's nice. It's very, very nice. So our second question is, what are you currently reading, and what is your favorite genre? So it's a two-part question.
Oh, wow. Well, I usually am reading 3 books at a time.
Wow.
So the first one I'll tell you about is called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. It's nonfiction. He was a forest ranger in Germany who has observed through his forestry work all of these fascinating details about trees, how social they are, how they communicate with each other. It's just a fascinating read. So I'm in that. I'm also reading the second of a fantasy. I like to try all genres too, of a fantasy series. This one is called Spirit Legacy, and I think the author's name is E.E. Holmes, about a young woman who discovers that she and her twin sister, whom she never knew, are portals to escort departed spirits from this world to the next. It's pretty interesting.
That sounds interesting.
And then I'm also reading, because I taught Spanish, I love Spanish, and I watched a series on Netflix while I work out called La Cocinera de Castamar. It's the cook of Castamar. Castamar was an estate, a duke's estate. It's in Spanish, which is something I just love because I don't really have anybody to speak it with lately. I'm not with people every day who speak Spanish. And so I'm reading this, and it's a wonderful, if you have a chance to watch it, it's a wonderful series. The basic premise is this young woman who has a fear of going outdoors since her father died in the war becomes the cook for this duke who has lost his wife. But it's more than just a romantic fantasy. There's a lot of secrecy and a lot of intrigue going on as an arch enemy of the Duke tries to destroy his family. So it's quite interesting. I'm not sure if there's an English translation, but I think some people would really enjoy seeing it on the Netflix series.
What's the fantasy part of it?
That doesn't have so much fantasy. That one is just romance.
Oh, okay.
But a romantic suspense. I'm sorry if I misspoke. Yeah.
Okay. I'm like, okay, I was waiting on the fantasy.
Sorry.
So what is your favorite genre?
You know, I find that very difficult to decide because
What about at the moment? What's your favorite
at
genre
the moment?
at the moment?
Because
I know it changes.
It does change all the time. I think I'm a little bit into, because the book I'm just getting ready to send out is romantic suspense. And so I think I'm doing a lot of reading in that area and enjoying that to try to get a feel for the pacing, the structure, the way that you put together characters in that particular genre. But I find it hard to limit myself to one, although I don't read a lot of nonfiction. So the trees.
The trees is the only one that you read. That sounds interesting. The trees itself. So I want to ask you a little bit about the nature park. So you live near a nature park, like a wild preserve type of thing,
or in Springboro, I actually serve on the park board, and Springboro has a lovely park system here with a number of parks that are recreational, historic, and this park behind me, Milo Beck, is basically scenic in the sense that it was land donated to the city by a longtime resident when he passed away. It has to remain a nature park. So there is a prairie element to it, and then a stream, trees, a back section. And in fact, there are about 85 acres that are as yet undeveloped because they are across the creek. You can wander them, but they have not yet had any definite trails put there. So we have all manner of wildlife. The coyotes can be quite active at night sometimes. It's an eerie sound, but it's something that we enjoy hearing from our screened-in porch, so we're not out walking around. But it's just, then there's a pond that belongs to our development, not the park, but it borders the park. So not only do we have the wooded area, the prairie area, but we have the pond. We have a beaver, a resident beaver, and just a lot of things that kind of relax your soul and give you some inspiration.
That's great. Now, how many books you have out there?
I have 4 published, and I have 2 in my pipeline.
Can you tell us about it?
Which ones would you like to know about?
You tell
us.
How
about your series? Start with the first of the series.
So my first 3 books are standalones, but they take place in the same fictional town, which is much like this area between Springboro and Franklin. The town is called Hopewell. So I dubbed those 3 the Hopewell Mysteries because there is a character from the first book who appears in the second, and then a character from the second book who appears in the third. But they are about different people in the town and different mysteries that occur. So this past year during the COVID kind of being in isolation, I decided that my character from the first book, The Dark End of the Rainbow, would like to have her own mystery series. In the first book, Xandra Bird is 16 years old. She's a skateboarder. She rescues a baby from a locked car, and then she and the baby disappear. And the police officer whose career is kind of on the ropes right now for something that happened has to solve the mystery of this double disappearance before the child's mother is convicted or suspected and indicted for murder. So Xandra was such a compelling character for me. I loved her. She was feisty and grew up with kind of a traumatic childhood, finds out all these secrets about herself and her biological parents because she was adopted. She's now 19 years old and she's going to Sinclair Community College because she wants to become a police officer and eventually a detective herself. So in Birds of a Feather, she's attending Sinclair. She works at a fast food restaurant. She's actually the manager, which isn't it's not unusual for these different fast food restaurants, at least before, to have young teenage and end of the teenage years people as managers, because I myself was one when I was working in summers between my college years. So she discovers a body in the by the trash bins behind the restaurant.
Wow.
And this will become basically her first case, even though she's not technically a police officer yet, but she's the one who discovers the body. There's a connection there. And so she is kind of a suspect, as are other members of her family. So she has to help them and save her family from more trauma. So that's Birds of a Feather.
So is the two books that are coming out soon, are they affiliated with this series?
No, this one is. Birds of a Feather is. But my other one is the romantic suspense. It's set in the Adirondacks, in a place my husband and I visited when we're big canoeing people. We like the North Woods. We like the outdoors. We went to this little town called Wanakina. It's in New York. It's called the Gateway to the Wilderness. That's how it bills itself on this big sign that it has at the as you enter the town. So in this one, which is called The Broken, a young Riley Marie Finn thinks she has her life together until her longtime boyfriend breaks up with her. And the school district she works for suspends her due to budget constraints. In the education area, it's called riffing. So they let you go with the caveat that they can call you back if the levy passes, kind of thing. So she feels like she has everything she had planned is gone. She takes off for a summer job in the Adirondacks, gets lost on her way, is rescued by a hunky, mysterious forest ranger, and finds herself in the middle of a murder mystery as a suspect.
Does the forest ranger talk to the trees?
Not yet, but he might. Listen, I had him before I found this book, and I thought, wow, this is like serendipitous that I'm going to read this book and maybe I'll get some cool ideas to kind of put in. But that book is basically finished. It's been to an editor. I'm doing a final, you know how you're never finished? Like you feel like you're never finished, even when you're finished.
Oh, yes. I think
so I'm
we all
going back
through
it, and then I think I'll be ready to send it out, I hope.
Okay, so let me ask you a little, how much sex is in there?
Well, I was reading about this on, Tim Smith is a local author. I don't know if you know him or not. He writes for Ecstasy.
Okay.
He writes these
He's more into the erotic
Well, he's got a private investigator who has a girlfriend. There's a lot of sex in there. Anyway, I went to the website to see, and apparently if you have 2 sex scenes, it's considered at one category. If you have more than 2, it jumps up into the more erotic category.
Really?
So mine is more of the slow burn with 2 really good sex scenes. How's that?
That's perfect. Perfect. I had to ask because it's like that's the question I always have in my head. How many sex scenes do I need, especially in my romantic suspense? Because I write a little bit on the darker side. So it's like, how many sex scenes can I put in there without having to be called erotic? You know
I know.
what I mean? I've never heard of a 2 or 3.
Well, you can check out that website and look at how they rate them. That I can't remember all the words they use for the rating system, but it's pretty interesting.
I'm sure. So where did you get your inspiration for the series and for this upcoming romantic suspense?
Inspiration, I always feel like it's all around us, but we have to pay attention. So for my first book, it's actually based on a real and a very sad calamity that happened in Cincinnati. A principal of a school left her daughter, her young infant daughter, in the car, forgot she was there, picked up donuts, went into school, did not remember her child was in the car until much later in the day, and the child did pass away.
From the heat?
Well, I was so struck by this, of course. It's so terrible. But I kept thinking, and this is how I kind of get my characters too. I kept thinking, what was that poor woman going to go through for the rest of her life? The guilt, the incredible sadness, the loss. So I wrote a short story based on that and gave it a scientific background, kind of the idea of falling into a black hole. I sent it off to a magazine who sent me a wonderful rejection letter and said this is a great premise, but nobody wants to read about something so tragic. And by the way, this happened to me and my daughter with my grandfather, but he got back to her before anything really bad happened.
Oh my goodness.
So I thought, oh my gosh. At one point he's telling me nobody will want to read this, and the other he's saying, but this really did happen to me. So I went back to my drawing board and I thought, well, what if somebody rescues that baby?
Yeah.
And then what if that baby then disappears? What's the story behind that? And that's really how Zanderberg came to be. I was also interested in female skateboarders. At that time, there wasn't a whole lot going on. 2015 with them, it's coming back again, and more women and girls are getting into it. So I did a lot of
my daughter skateboards.
I loved it. I read about all of the great skateboarders and the tricks and all that background you carry in, but you don't really put into your novel, but you need it to understand your characters.
Almost
background.
Yeah, and I just love this young woman, and so I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, she deserves more. She deserves more stories, so I'm going to give her some.
Very cool. Very cool. I remember you also saying that you like I brought up about the many publications. So what was the different types of publications you had your works done in?
Well, I started out when I decided after many years and my children were in college that I wanted to get back into writing again. It's something I always wanted to do. I had all these little pieces of paper with things jotted down on them and ideas. And Antioch Writers Workshop and an organization called Ohio Writing, Ohio Teachers Write. It was based at Miami University, and teachers got to go there who taught English, who taught writing, and were encouraged to do their own writing. So I started stringing for the Dayton Daily News. I did human interest stories, which has always been my bag anyway. I love meeting people and talking about what drives them, what their passions are. I started writing short stories and began to get them accepted in some journals, mostly literary journals. Then at that time I had a writing group. So my writing group was instrumental in getting me published, because one of my stories, when I finished it, my friend Rosalie, who has since passed away, said, "You need to send this to Alfred Hitchcock Mystery Magazine." And they took it, which was like, oh my God, I was so thrilled. Plus
So they took you.
Yeah, so I got a few stories in there. I continued to send short stories out to things like, mostly they're journals who are supported by colleges. So the Oyez Review, the Broken Plate, I sent out a few. I don't write a whole lot of nonfiction because it's too much like opening a vein in front of people and bleeding onto the page. It's really hard for me to put those things on the paper. But I did a few of those, got those published. Zodiac Review published one of my nonfiction pieces, and poems. And I love writing poems too. So that's been another side gig, maybe you might say, during the COVID isolation, was to write some more poems and start sending them out.
That's how I started writing, was through poetry. And as a young kid, it was my outlet. I was able to express. I was an army kid. Coming over to the States. My first language was Korean, so I had to learn English, and then having to learn to make friends with people that didn't really want to be friends with you. So it was very, very difficult. So I used poetry. So that was my writing background when I was a kid. So when did you know that you wanted to become a writer?
Probably like many people when I was a kid. I was writing. My mother says, I don't remember this. My mother says I taught myself to read. I was reading above grade level. She used to say, "You're too young to read that." And I'd sneak these books, and I'd be reading all of these books. And I wrote stories. Even then, I wrote plays. I loved plays. And I used to make my entire neighborhood. I have lots of siblings. I have 6 siblings. So I'm the oldest. So I would make them all come and act in my plays, or sit down in the benches and the chairs and watch my plays. And of course they didn't want to, but Big Sister would make them. So I did a little neighborhood newspaper, when you used to. I'm old enough to know you used to have to mimeograph stuff and crank the handle to get things to come out. So I'd do a little newspaper. I was always writing. But then things happen in your life that take you away from that.
Oh, most definitely. Mine was marriage and kids. But my husband, I was married once before, and that actually spurred me to write my very first book. Through the tragedy of that marriage, it spurred me, it challenged me to write. So what challenged you to write your very first book?
Well, this is very personal. This is the kind of thing that's difficult to write about. But our second child was born profoundly handicapped. It's very difficult for people to understand what profoundly means, but he never advanced beyond a 3-month stage of development.
Okay.
His body grew a little bit, but his mind and his ability to do things did not. So my intention when I was pregnant with him was after he was born, we'd have our 2 children, and I would write. I had that in mind as my goal. But after Scott was born, nothing was the same again. And in many ways, I lost my voice. Now, I don't mean literally my speaking voice, but that interior writing voice was subsumed in all of the requirements, the caring for him, the therapy sessions, the praying for some miracle that was not going to come. So he died when he was 19 after an operation that we had opposed for a long time, but was necessary because he had a feeding tube that had to be reinserted. And
Okay.
it did not go well. And after he passed away, I thought, I need to write. I need to get back to that again. And so that's really what got me back into the writing. And then when I retired from my full-time teaching job, I thought, now I can write a novel. So
Awesome.
that got me into the novel. Yeah.
It's therapy, isn't it? It does work as therapy.
In a lot of ways. And I think we all have tragedy that we have to deal with, to overcome. Trauma is endemic in all of us, and how we meet that is so important. And I think I want my characters to kind of reflect that as well. So.
I totally understand that. I live, when I write, I write through my experiences, and I would think a lot of people would, you know. I was very fortunate my father being in the Army. We traveled around a lot. I met a lot of different people and experienced a lot of different things. And especially in the time of like the 70s and 80s, there was so much stuff that was going on in those 2 decades,
Yeah.
So I use those experiences to, I think, enrich my characters and in my writing. So, what would you say that from your past tragedies would definitely help you with yours, to move on? Let's say if you had a stumbling block and help you with yours, or help any other writer, what would you suggest to them?
I think in some ways, it's like allowing yourself to open a tap inside you and to let the different emotions come out in the way that is best for them. Some of that you may only write and keep for yourself, that maybe nobody else will ever read that poem or that story. But if writing is a passion for you, then there will be a story there, and you will find that story. You will find the one that works best for your particular makeup and personality. And I mean, I've never found a dead body, but I write about people finding dead bodies. I think that I still could take the idea of how terrifying that could be, or how mystifying that could be, from other things that I've encountered. Knowing that something was wrong with my baby and having some doctors tell me, no, there's nothing wrong, but there was. And I had to be the one that had to persevere and push to say, no, there's something wrong here. You need to help me find out what it is. So characters need to do that too. I think no matter what genre we write, our characters come through that process. They have to find some inner strength and resolve inside of themselves to get through whatever we obstacles we put in their place. So
So what is your process when you come up with an idea? What is your process from start to finish with a book?
Well, it might be just, maybe it's like yours. I I write the whole thing out. I don't stop. I don't go back. I try really hard not to do any polishing. I just try to get the whole thing out. I know usually I have a title, but as with this romantic suspense, the title has changed like 6 times. I keep thinking, is this a better one? Is this a better one?
What
But
is the
I know
title?
right now it's The Broken.
Okay.
But there's a reason for that, but we won't go into that. Anyway, so the process. So process is, I know the beginning, I know the opening. I try to, like all of us, craft some astonishingly wonderful opening that's going to keep people reading. And then I pretty much know the end, but I don't know the route completely
Right.
they're going to take to reach that. And part of that is I like surprises. So I like to be surprised by, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. And I've had those surprises when I've written all of my novels. I'll be
The
writing along.
characters like to take over.
Oh my God, you get to a plot point and suddenly this happens and you go, oh, wow. But if I feel like that, my reader, hopefully, oh, my cats are fighting. So if you hear the
Is that
older
what that
one,
noise was?
the older one doesn't like the younger one playing with her tail. And of course, when you're still a kitten, that's what you want to do, is annoy the other cat. Anyway, so I know the beginning, I know the end. I usually know a title or a working title. And then I write it all out. I do not stop. I know there are lots of problems in it, but I don't care. I just get it down. And then I go back and do a real methodical revision after revision after revision. I'll look at characters one time, and I'll look at the plot itself, the next revision. And then I'll look at the language. Is there a way that I can elevate this language? Or if you use Grammarly, it'll tell you use a really good word, and it'll say, maybe your audience won't know this word. So you have to decide.
I use Grammarly too, and it
Yeah.
tells me that, and then I'm like, "Urgh."
Well, I actually would like my audience to be educated to use these words. So it is kind of funny, but so each pass through, there's a polishing, and I compare myself, although I'm not nearly as skillful, to a sculptor who takes a block of marble or rock or metal and then carves away at it, just works at it and polishes it until it gets to the thing that's hidden inside of it. So I hope that's what I do to my work, is to continue to polish it until it's ready to go out.
I know. When I write, I'm all over the place. I'm a total pantser, except for like recently, because I started a series. I have to keep it on track. I have to write down. But you're right. When you get to I know the beginning and I know the ending. It's that middle part. The meat of it is, that's the part that for me, is the experience. What about you, Rochelle?
I use Pro Writing Aid, and just talking about uh, it works in conjunction with Scrivener, which is where I write usually, and it always tells me that I use British phraseology, and I'm like, I'm tapping into part of my heritage, I guess. I don't know. It's just interesting, but for my process, I'm a total pantser. I mean, I do write romance, so there is a happily ever after, so the ending is known. And usually, I kind of cheat because I have the dream that I usually base my stories off of. So, I mean, it's kind of like an outline because I've seen this dream. But, with anything, the characters take over and situations, you know, happen, especially when you add in, the B and C characters, and sometimes they just throw the speed bumps in, which enriches the story. And
Most definitely.
you know, sometimes they're even more fun. You find this person is very interesting, and they get their own novel eventually because they're just such fun to write.
I love secondary characters. I mean, I think they bring the story and they add so much spice to to the story. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
have
they're
your
right.
characters as the
There's a
meat.
seasoning
Yeah,
of the story.
they're like the spicy season. And I don't mean sexy.
And they can no, but they can be quite spicy. Like Rochelle was telling me about her older lady character that just
Oh yes, I
inserted
love
herself,
her.
and her mouth, just whatever she thinks comes right out of it. It's delightful. But you're all,
Well,
at the same time, like if you were her daughter, you'd be cringing a little bit, like, oh my God, this woman's saying this in front of all these people.
yeah, she's one of those people that she came in the first draft about 75 to 80% of the way in, and I was just like, no, this lady's got to be in the very beginning. So she's like at the very, very beginning because she just adds so much, uh, you know, stuff. She's salty and savory and spicy. She's all the stuff, all the seasonings in
The
the
mixed
story.
bag of nuts, right?
Yeah. And I like to say when I'm writing a story, and since I write romantic comedy, you know, I got to keep it light, but I have things that my characters deal with. But when it gets too serious, when it starts to get a little dark, or just it needs to be lightened up a bit, I just throw her in because it's instantaneous laughs. Because, like you said, doesn't have a filter, and she's
No.
dirty, and you just don't expect this sweet little grandma character to, you know, ask somebody, I'll give you $40 to drop your pants, kind of thing. She's fun.
Okay,
See, I gotta say, when I first met Rochelle, I think she evokes a lot of that Desiree in her time.
well, I have a question
Life
for
goal.
you, and for any authors out there. So, how do you decide on the names for your characters?
Who? For
Oh, that's
me,
a good
they come to
question.
me. For me, I've never had a problem with naming any of my characters. Um, that's usually like the first thing when a character develops in my head. They tell me their names, first and last name.
Yes.
Very little, very seldom the last name doesn't come to me, but it'll eventually will. But the first name right away.
Well, with Fortuna, I'm always looking for funny names because there's lots of pun and innuendo. So I keep things when I find them like this, which it's backwards, but it says Loda, Schitt. I just keep things like I haven't used that yet, but if I find something, I write them down. But you know, for Fortuna series, they're a bunch of I'm sorry, but they're a bunch of funny names that you know could be double entendres, and I just keep a list. But you know, some of them they if you look up and go Google funny names, um, they have a list, and you can mix and match and things. And sometimes I try to whatever their jobs are. Um, I try to like I don't know look up meanings for the like in Turkish or something, just to have a different, or surnames, you know, I get on the surnames. I forget what it's called. I think it's something surnames. It's like a baby generate or baby name
Yes.
generator type thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But there's one for surnames, and I look it up. Now for my fantasy, which it's not published, but it's an epic fantasy. It's kind of like Lord of the Rings, but except for it's got a main female lead. For there, I did a lot of going to Google Translate and putting words in that I wanted, since it has to deal with the Moon Clan, which is a type of elf, basically. I put in things like lunar and, things like that, and then put it into Gaelic or
Elvish.
Turk. Yeah, well, it's not Elvish. I just put it into the Google Translate so that it'd be something that people could say, but
Yes.
look cool. So it'd be different.
Wait a minute,
So
there's an actual like app that could translate English to Elvish?
well, there probably is, and
I
probably
don't know.
Klingon too, because
I was
people
just
speak
thinking about
Klingon.
that and thought, well, there should be.
Like that
There's
Well,
would be very
probably
interesting.
Klingon too.
I'm sure there is.
Well, I love the idea of having humor, and I think that my books tend to be maybe a little bit darker, so I try to inject humor. But I think writing humor is really quite a talent,
Oh, I
and
definitely agree. Rochelle has it in spades.
yes,
Well, thank you.
absolutely.
This is how I am, though, so this is me naturally.
Yes, that's why I said she has it in spades.
Well, I hope that my character in The Broken, Riley, she has some very funny moments happen, things happen to her, and I hope that they come across as that humorous to balance out the darker things that are going on. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I'm writing my current series. I'm writing the second book, and I have a character in there, and I just love this old lady, but I have to kill her off, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
like it's breaking my heart.
it's
But
it's
because
hard to kill off a character you love. Yes.
yes, she's a hoot. She is definitely she's an 80-year-old woman, and she pretty much says it like it is. She's a Southern, it's from Tennessee, and she grew up down there, and so it's like she doesn't pull no punches, and especially to her grandson, she tells him like it is, and she does it in a way that is so funny, and I'm like, I gotta, she knows she's gotta die for it to go, in order for the story to work, and it's like, oh,
I've
like
been
what?
angry at authors who have killed off favorite characters. When Elizabeth George, in her series that was set in England with the nobleman who was also a Scotland Yard detective, and when she killed off his love Helen, who was pregnant, so the baby died too.
Oh my goodness.
I was
Oh, that's
devastated.
tragic.
I was so angry. And then her follow-up book, which really looked at social conditions, especially among young people in home situations that were not conducive to growing up well, and we find out who committed the murder. It's heartbreaking, the whole thing. I kept thinking about when Arthur Conan Doyle tried to kill off Sherlock, and there was such an outcry he had to bring him back. But sometimes you can't do any resurrections. So
No. But that's Sherlock
Well,
Holmes. Sherlock Holmes
I'm
is a man of is a man of mystery, and all is on his own.
I've been trying to invite Bree, but she can't. I send her messages,
Yeah.
but you can send the live. She's not joining it, or she's not joining to watch. Um, and I tried to message her on Facebook. Let's see if you
I
saw
did
me
too.
zoning out.
Yeah.
And she's not looking. So every time I invite her, it says failed to join, but that's because she's not watching.
Right.
I wish she would look at, I wish she would get a notification that I'm sending her these things so she would click on them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Unless she's trying to join through her computer and not her phone.
which I can't, right. And I messaged her, you can message people on your computer. So I messaged her on Instagram on
Right.
her computer, use your phone. Yeah,
Well, I'm sad that she's not able to join us.
but she's
But
trying. I mean, I keep
yeah.
inviting her, but
Well, how do your writing days go?
For my writing days, I write every day. And on the weekends, I try to be more just out of my office and hang with the family. Oh, well, now that we're empty nesters, I have three kids. My two oldest ones are living in Hawaii, and my youngest one's off in college. So it's just my husband and I here. So, we see each other every day. So since my youngest left for college, I'm like writing practically every day, and it's because I have two projects that is going to be coming out at the end of this year. One in October, so next month, and then the other one in December. I'm kind of constantly getting with promos and getting all that set up and ready to go, and so yeah, and then writing the next book.
Right.
So, but I write. If you're asking about how long I write anywhere from I get up at around between 5 and 6, and I write from that point on after I get my coffee, of course, till about 3.
That's a long writing day.
But I get up. I don't sit all day, so I'm up probably I get up probably maybe every half hour, either in a washroom break or downstairs for a snack, say hello to my husband, just to get out and move my legs a little bit, and so my back and my legs are not killing me. But yeah, I usually till about 3, unless something's really in need, then I'm on it until I'm done.
What about you, Rochelle? Because I know you have, like the other day, you had a daughter you had to take to work, and how does your writing day go?
Well, when I can write and I'm not doing stuff, I will go to someplace, usually like Panera or a local coffee shop, and sit. And that way I'm not distracted by the things in my house, like my cute kitties. I have 3 of them, and they're very distracting. And then I have my daughter who she's unable to drive right now. She will get her license back though soon, at the end of the year. So, but until then, it's kind of like I'm chauffeur. My son's in college, so we were, packing him up, but he's gone now. So I'm finding I have more time to actually write now. Almost an empty nester, just with, got a 21-year-old living in my basement. So, but when I do write, I'm doing promo, or I want to get time to work. I'm working on my group. I'm editing these videos. I'm recruiting people to join us. So if you know somebody, or if you'd like to join us, go to our Facebook page and click on the pinned post with our schedule for next. It's all full for this year. So anyway,
That's great.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. I love talking with people. It's interesting to find out their different processes. That's plural.
That was good.
That works.
Is that one of those Britishisms?
I don't know.
Could be.
Processes, and maybe we're writers. We can invent things. So, yeah. And then I have a couple works. I need to edit the Fortuna Dare Society. I'm starting another series. It's a men's book club. They're going to be short. They're more like novellas, between 15 to 25-ish. And I figure once I get them all done, which there's 6 guys in the group, I'll make it like a big book. And but the first one's coming out in February, so I need to get my pants in gear, or my butt in gear, to get editing. And then I'm finishing up a story. So I'm working on that. It's a paranormal rom-com, which is interesting. And then I'm also collaborating with CJ on a story, and that's a learning process. So, and we don't have a goal for that, but it's been fun to work with her. But I am being forced to write when she gets done with her chapter. She sends it off to me. So it's nice. I have a deadline.
It is
And
good to
again,
have deadlines.
it
Yes.
does. It really does motivate you because
I
when you're
mean, it
doing an
isn't. I mean,
indie,
we really don't have a. I mean, we don't put ourselves. We don't put a deadline on ourselves, but I think it just we strive to get that next chapter done. You know,
yeah, it's
we get that chapter
motivation.
done. We discuss it, and then we go ahead and say discuss what the next chapter should be to kind of correlate with what just went on and what should go on in the next set of scenes. And I think it's that process has been working for us well. You know.
It's interesting. It's fun and challenging to write with someone else, to do a co-author thing. But I think deadlines, self-imposed, with the idea that we have to be flexible because life intrudes and we have no control over things that happen, but always have deadlines that I set mentally. And sometimes I'll actually write them on the calendar with the hope that I'll have this portion done or this revision or this chapter drafted by such and such a time. And it at least keeps me on a semi-schedule. So even if something interrupts and I have to push it back a week or two, that's okay. So I had hoped to have this revision of The Broken done by the end of August, but then my husband had some medical problems and that kind of threw everything out of whack for a couple of weeks. So I think I'll be done by the end of this week. So a week off from the original deadline isn't too bad.
Now, do you go through like a promotional group to help you promote the book out, or you do it all upon yourself?
I haven't, but I'm thinking about doing it with the next book that comes out. I really am. I think all of this, all of the media that we have to use is wonderful, but it takes so much time. When you
It does.
think about all of that. So I just signed up for Twitter because I'm thinking about doing their their pitch thing.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I've never done that before, but tomorrow, tomorrow is their next one. So if I'm going to do that, I got to get my act together and get a pitch ready.
Get a good. If you could do a one liner, are the best hit.
So that's what they do
Uh,
on Twitter.
yeah, yeah. If you could do a one-liner, like a short sentence describing your, I know it's hard, but if you do that one-liner and that's the catch. That's the catch of it, you know. So, yeah, because
Well,
then it keeps their attention.
right. Well, I have a friend who just did it the last time around and got some interest. And so I read hers and thought, wow, this is really good. I got to see if I could come up with something that
So, are
good.
you
But
looking traditional publishing versus
it, that's always been a goal for me, but I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm with a real small press now, although they just joined with a larger press out of New York. So we'll see if there's any additional marketing to be done now that they're part of the larger one. Oh,
oh,
Got some echoes
everything.
going on.
yes. Wow.
Whatever you pushed. That's weird.
That is very weird. I had a call coming in, so I had to cut it out. So got rid of the call, so it shouldn't affect us. Shouldn't affect it, but
It
apparently
But
sounds
it
I,
like it's
did.
gone.
It's gone.
yeah,
It
it
should be
must have been
gone.
that.
Wow.
Hmm.
I know
Anyway,
that's weird.
yeah, I think this I feel an immense pressure to advertise, to market, to do all of those things. And it takes away from my ability to spend time writing. Well, I'm
Yeah.
getting some feedback, so the echo.
Yeah. Well, that echo
Yeah.
has always been there. I think it's much louder now than it was before. I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyways, how do you feel about the pressure to do your own marketing and advertising?
For me, I started off with a small press, and then I've always had to market. They didn't do any marketing for us at all. You know, if they did, it would be, I could count on one finger how many times they did it. So it wasn't justified to stay with them. So once I got all my rights back for my books, I relaunched them and did it self-publishing. But I am the same. My goal has been to publish under a certain house, but I think with the last rejection I received from that publishing house, I am going to be more goal oriented to stay indie publishing and focus on with uh, with helping by a PA, you know what I mean, for promos, and then do hire a promotional, do like a book blog run and you know, and stuff like that to get the books out, and just basically get promos made and have that sent out with the help of the PA. So that's pretty much what I am kind of leaning towards in a great way. What about you, Rochelle?
Um, what was the question?
About about all of the marketing and advertising
Promos.
we have to do.
The promos. Well, yeah, it is a time waster, but I mean, to get people to see your stuff, you have to do it. And unfortunately, you have to spend almost as much as you make if you pay for things. Um, I mean, you want people, especially when you have a series, you want people to start with that first book so they read through. So I spend most of my time. Uh, there's a bunch of 99-cent book groups on Facebook, and I will post the first of my series, which I have lowered to 99 cents, trying to get new readers to read through. Um, they hook them with the first book. And then, of course, there's a newsletter. Okay, I hear somebody's getting really loud.
Nobody's talking.
I don't know, it's weird. It was a microphone issue. It's returned to normal, but sorry. Um, yeah, I don't. It's not my favorite thing to do. I enjoy sometimes making the graphics, but of course it could be a time suck.
Yes.
I devote
I mean,
one day to do it, to make promos, just one day, and I get whatever I can get done for that day, and then I devote the rest of the week to doing things. I mean, it doesn't matter if I'm like searching for a model for an image, you know what I mean, something new to brighten up, maybe different backgrounds for the current promo I have, and I'm just switching it out. Other than that, that so I don't turn around and have to worry about it on a daily basis.
Well, it's always challenging to decide because I usually set a yearly budget in the hopes that whatever I can afford to put into it is going to show at least some return for that. I love doing things in person, the signings, the book fairs.
Yes.
So I might mention that to anybody who's listening and you guys we've almost got a full complement of authors. I have 4 slots open for the in Springboro Meet the Authors event. So if there are a couple more people I'm going to contact, but if you know of anyone who might be interested in doing this, you have to get a hold of me. I can tell them what's open. So,
Whoa.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, it is that time. Thank you so much, Jen, for joining us and spending an hour talking with us. We enjoyed it. So thank you so much. And
well,
thank you out there.
thank you for having me. This has been a great experience, and hopefully there will be some more of these in all of our future shows.
Most definitely. Most definitely. And thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you the next Wednesday we are live. Bye.
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 For I'm too invested, I should probably ask you all my questions.